Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of the Roaring Agents podcast. Today, I'm very happy to have my buddy Ethan Frelly, a Dallas, Denton, Texas real estate agent who was a Portland, Oregon real estate agent that we worked together for like 6 years. What the reason I wanted Ethan on today is I wanted to talk about becoming the fish out of water again. It's hard starting in real estate, and he was part of the Tiger Chamber of Commerce. He knew everywhere. He had driven all over the place, and there's just that nice security of knowing everything and everywhere. And now you get to start all over. So we're going to talk about that
Yeah.
today. Hey, Ethan, how you doing? Sorry to say howdy because you're in Texas now, so it turned into this
Howdy.
weird.
I should have worn my hat. I actually have one now.
So let's talk about that big shift. You had to get your license. You already had your license here, but you still had to go through all the
Mhm.
hours. What's it like getting licensed in Texas versus Oregon?
Yeah, I mean, talk about leaving on a high note and like the top of my game. I mean, the year that I left was probably the one of the best years that I was having. But yet I was already I was already committed to being here. So yeah, the big difference was I had to do 80 more hours of work to get my license. So I think Oregon is 120. I had to go through, sorry, it's 60 more hours. So I had to do 180 in Texas. I was really hoping that they'd have some sort of reciprocation, but they didn't. And funny enough is that I just didn't get my national license information to the Texas Trek board fast enough. So I also had to take my national license test again too. So the great thing is I passed the first time, and I felt pretty good about that. But there was definitely that brick wall that you hit halfway through where like, do I really want to do this again? And I had to go through that mental block of like, yes, I do want to do this again. And I mean, I'm halfway through, and it was tough, but it was definitely I'm definitely happy with the decision with moving and then also moving my license over.
Are there any glaring differences between how you write offers, presenting offers? Is any of the kind of these cultural things like Oregon, we don't do the buyer broker agreement, but on the East Coast, almost everyone does it automatically. So that's a big cultural
Mhm.
difference. What kind of things have you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, just to jump off that right there, with EXP in general, they want to see the buyer broker agreement signed. So that's been something that I've had to really adjust, just because in Oregon it was definitely like a handshake, and we're gonna do our best for you, and people were totally fine with that. But I have to say that in learning about the state of Texas and learning going through the licensing process, Texas was one of the first states that actually had a real estate law. That so a lot of the stuff that I saw in Oregon and I didn't really understand, it made sense after going through the licensing through Texas, because it started in Texas, and a lot of the stuff that we see that is now just kind of normal in Oregon was because of things that happened in Texas. So that was kind of cool to like learn the backstory of it. But as far as like the major differences, uh, the the contract is very similar. There's not a lot of, I mean, even in Washington too, because we did some stuff in Washington, being so close to Washington State, where you can kind of cross things out and write things in that doesn't really go here. So it's a lot more, it's a lot tighter as far as what can be said and done. But then they also have just different words that they use, like the inspection period is called an option period. You have to pay for that, and it gets paid direct. Well, it used to get paid directly to the owner, or the seller, excuse me. Now it kind of gets paid like earnest money. But if you decide to walk after or during the option period here, you lose that option period money, and that's just another form of negotiation.
How much is
So
that?
that's a little bit different. It's different, right? I mean, it just depending on the market, it could be it could be $100, it could be 1,000, it could be more, just to get your deal through.
So you pay for your option period.
Pay for it, and it's non-refundable.
That's so different than here. I mean, so Oregon
Yeah.
is super buyer favored. Like there's 5 ways you can get out of an Oregon contract, and buyers not paying for that. That's amazing. How hard was that for you to wrap your mind around?
Um, I wouldn't say it was necessarily hard. It was definitely a change, just because we have our buyer consultations. I'm still really strong into having buyer consultation, but so working that into it and having my clients understand what that means for them, um, was a little bit different for me. And for people who have bought homes out here, it's not that big of a deal, right? It's just kind of the normal for them. However, for me explaining that to a new homeowner, where that's just like, there's more money just out of your pocket, and also inspections are just they're a couple $100 more out here,
Hmm.
than what I'm used to in Oregon. And then they have more too. So specifically, Oregon's really big on sewer scopes, and that's just kind of becoming now a big thing. Oregon's really big on radon inspections. That's not a big thing out here, but the big thing out here are pools. And we don't have a lot of pools in Oregon, but there are a ton of pools. I mean, I probably have to say 30% of homes out here have built-in pools. So knowing a pool guy is like the thing to know out here. And then knowing a person that can actually inspect a pool and knows what they're looking at, because you're looking through water, and trying to see 10 feet down, and like, what's that little dot on there? That's been kind of a new thing for me.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Like, so in Washington, I think the sellers have an option where they can get out of the contract, which Oregon, no. Once the seller signs, they're in. Does Texas have anything like that?
No, that's similar to Oregon, where I mean, it's when you're in, you're in. Now, I mean, you can make it difficult during the option period, just as Oregon, but everyone's, you put your house on the market, you want to sell it. So people are pretty good with understanding, what we're asking for. But and similarly, I mean, I don't ever ask for money off unless I have a bid from a contractor.
When I was a teenager, one of my friends worked at one steakhouse and I worked at a different steakhouse. And then he left that one and came to our steakhouse. And he was constantly like, well, we didn't do that like that over there. And we didn't do that. Is there anything else that stands out to you just in the overall process? You're like, no, we didn't do that. Why is it like that?
Um, No, what, the one thing that I'm really used to seeing out in Oregon versus not seeing out here are the T signs, the T posts for the for sale in front. They don't use them out here. And I mean I mean, if for non-real estate people, like, it's just that T, the white post where you hang your sign and it says for sale. Um I don't know if it's just expensive. There's not like a market out here for it, but most of the time it's just like literally like a sign that you put down in the front, and it's
Really?
kind of just like waves around, and it's so not appealing to me. Like, it's harder for me to find homes when I'm showing homes, because I'm looking for this white post. I don't ever see it. So for me, just in general, that's been a little bit different. And then also the key boxes. So I mean, I cut my teeth, so to speak, on the key boxes that we put the numbers in, through Central Lock. But the ones that we use out here are much like the ones that are in Salem, Oregon, which are, um,
Supra.
the Supra. Yeah. And the Supra, I mean, I have to pay, $20 a month to just access it through my cell phone. So that's been kind of a difference in price of doing business out here.
Hmm. All right. So
Yeah.
you went from knowing all the nook and crannies of Tigard. You were almost like a de facto mayor. Everybody knew who you were in Tigard. Now you're in a brand new place. Nobody
Yeah.
knows you. You don't know where things are. How did you get acclimated to the area?
Well, I did what I probably wouldn't have suggested anybody else do, which is I took kind of like a half a year off. I mean, and that was because I was getting my license. It took me longer than I expected to, because it was a lot longer than I expected it to be. Um, but I thought, okay, well, I've got a little bit of money saved up. I wanted to get used to the area, so and the time off, my kids were out of school at that point, so we just drove around and did a lot of driving. So I mean, for me, getting to know the major thoroughways, the major streets, and then the new building in the area was kind of what I focused on. And then I mean, you'd mentioned it before. I joined a chamber of commerce right away too, and that helped a lot.
So let's talk about, you hadn't been new. You at the Tiger Chamber of Commerce, you were an ambassador. You were the one, bringing people in and all that. So what was it like to be a new person in a whole chamber?
Yeah, I mean, when I left, I was actually the chair of the board for the Chamber
Oh,
of
that's right.
Commerce. So I mean, yeah, that, then that, and honestly, I still feel bad about leaving through halfway through my term there. But everyone was so amazing with understanding, that I was leaving. Things change. So on one of the trips that I came, I did 3 trips before we actually did the move, and on one of the trips, I just walked into the Chamber of Commerce office. So I introduced myself. I told them what I was doing. I was moving here, and then I just decided to see who it is that I could sit down and meet with. And luckily, I was able to connect with the CEO, the local CEO of the Denton Chamber of Commerce. And then I also found another smaller local chamber of commerce called the Lake Cities Chamber of Commerce, which I'm a little more involved with than Denton.
And
So so yeah, just meeting those.
how many real estate agents are already in the bigger chamber?
Um, Probably about 30. So there's a lot more than mine than what I was used to. I mean, with Tiger Chamber, I'd have to say that the realtor. I mean, as big as that chamber was, um, there weren't a lot of other real estate agents that had joined the chamber just because there is a little bit of a you got to show up to get the business, and sometimes real estate agents just don't like that the necessity of always being somewhere. So yeah, there were a lot. And I mean, almost at every chamber meeting, there were at least 2 or 3 that would show up on a regular basis.
Just 2 or 3 out of 30.
Yeah.
And when I talk to agents about networking, I usually talk about you because you're a big networker, and how you got involved in that big thing is it's about who shows up. And even then, it's still
Mhm.
about connecting with people. You're not going to connect with everyone. So don't worry about that. There's 30 people on the list. It's the
Yeah.
person who's going to show up. Have you gotten any business from that chamber yet?
So I actually have yes and no. So not from the Benton Chamber, just because it's like I said, it is about showing up, and I didn't really connect very much with the one big meeting that they have every month. I was used to with Tiger Chamber having it once a week, so I did find that the Lake City Chamber of Commerce does have a weekly one, and that one I haven't gotten necessarily business from, but I've made a lot of good friends there, and as real estate agents, it is about making friends first and having that connection, having a relationship first. That being said, though, I mean, I have a few people that have been already asking me, "Hey, can you start looking for properties for me?" One of the folks there, I'm looking for a property for him to build a, a commercial area building, excuse me, for him. So I mean, yes, I'd have to say that's probably a pretty good lead that I've gained.
What else have you done to become part of the community? Because I know you're a huge community guy. What else have you done?
So I'm super lucky in that our realtor association is located 15-minute drive away from me. So I joined and they jumped 2 feet in. I called up the president of the association and then the CEO. There's a volunteer president and then the CEO who's a paid employee. And I just asked like, hey, what can I do? So I did end up joining 2 committees. One is the education board and then education committee, excuse me, and then one is a super summit committee, which is one big kind of CE class that we do a year. So I joined both of those. I've been volunteering now there for a year and a half. And for me, that was really more about getting to know my fellow agents, getting to know the big players, the ones that everybody knows. because the people that are on the board of about 20 are the ones that are doing the most amount of business in our area, and they know the most amount about our community specifically because they've been part of it for so long.
You also joined a team, right?
Yeah, so it took me about a year, and I ended up finding someone that is with EXP on the board. She actually ended up being the interim and then now current president of that board, which it comes with a lot of respect and a lot of notoriety. And she's a great lady too, in
How much
general.
has
I mean,
joining a team kind of helped you fill out the missing pieces of just your knowledge and those connections?
you know, from experience, I started off on a team right away, you know, and I knew that there's not a lot of people that can be successful alone. And that's kind of where I was having struggle with was I didn't really know um, where to get the business from specifically. I mean, you know, I had all this experience and I was ready to use it, but yet I needed to meet more people. So being on a team helped with that. They have a lot of specific events that they like us going to, and it's a small team. I mean, we've got two other buyer agents and then a listing agent. And then also just writing my first offers. It's so nice to be able to just say, hey, can you please look at this over? And you know, I mean, just kind of like day one, offer one for me in Oregon, it took me a whole day to write my first offer, even though I'd written over 100, you know, probably over 300 in Oregon, but yet, you know, Texas comes by and it's like, I don't know if I'm doing this right, just because there's a lot of legal stuff that we have to understand now.
I mean, this is what some people just kind of gloss over is this is important. This is legal. This is not just, you know, hold your nose and hope you make it through. It's
Right?
important.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, I had a question. Did you have to did you have to be humble a little bit, swallow a little bit of pride? I mean, here you were, top producing agent, going to a new market, taking a day to write an offer, do all that. What was that like for your, I don't know, did it affect your ego? Did it matter?
I have to say, I mean, like, you know, we're in this business to know what we're doing and to know that I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and not necessarily not know, but you know, just be cautious of how I was doing things was a little bit different for me. So I mean, long answer was, or short answer to that would be yes. Long answer though was that yeah, I came from being the lead buyer's agent for my team to now having a lead buyer's agent that was looking over my stuff. So I did have just this experience that I was really ready to use. However, it wasn't the same experience as having somebody that was doing a lot of work over here. So yeah, I had to eat a little bit of humble pie there.
So what else have you kind of been doing while you've been down there?
Really good. You know, it's there's the market here is so big. And I think somebody had asked me like, hey, you know, where did your old team really focus on in Portland? I was like, it's just Portland. You know, Portland is such a small market compared to out here. I mean, it's out here. There's it's about 7 times the size of Portland specifically. So I mean, you know, our speed limit's 75, whereas used to 55 on the highways out there.
You like that with
You know,
your
I was used to.
tell them about your car real quick.
Well, that's been a little bit of a sore subject, but you know, I've
Oh,
got a 95
no.
Dodge Stealth that yeah, I've been working on it. It's been really great. And then all of a sudden we found that there's an actual hole in my transmission bell housing, and it's not supposed to be there. So so luckily we found a donor car with a new transmission, so that's getting installed in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I've been having to use my mom's car. So, but she's got a little fun convertible, which is perfect for out here anyway. So it fits in. But I mean, that being said, I mean, in Oregon and in Portland specifically, I mean, and you could even go to Salem within an hour. most of my time is spent, in the car here. So there's a lot of new highways that I had to learn. I think that's been the biggest thing is learning the driving style out here, learning that it's going to take 45 to an hour to do anything out here if I want to be in anywhere except for Denton. I mean, Denton is kind of like Portland. Like if I want to stay within 30 minutes of my house, it's always going to be in Denton. But if I
Mm.
want to expand, if I want to be a buyer's agent, I had to put another half an hour onto that travel time, and know
Wow.
that I'm going to spend a lot of money on gas. I mean, they have express lanes that you have to pay for out here. So that was a new thing for me to have to understand that I mean, if I wanted to get somewhere a little bit faster, it's going to cost me like $5 more just to be on the express lane. So
That's
so
that's
doing a lot of
crazy.
driving, that's for sure.
New construction is really big out there, right?
Yeah, and that's really what's been keeping the market so active out here. It's just that where it sometimes it's hard to find homes that continuously are popping up in Portland. At least out here, there's new construction out here, so there's constantly a new neighborhood getting popped up. And I mean, some of these builders have 60-day build times. So I mean, you could in fact be in a new home in 60 days, depending on where you're going to be.
You bought a new home.
Yeah, it did not take 60 days. It took 11 months for this one to be built.
Well, my understanding is that Texas has like two or three of the highest build cities in America. There's just a ton of homes being built
Yeah,
out there. So that helps with inventory, which is,
yeah.
dude, we're still like bottom, barely above where we were last year for inventory. It's so low.
Yeah, right now we're probably about a month and a half to 2 months for inventory, and I mean when we went as low as a half a month, and that was 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago. But since then, I mean, construction has loosened up. I mean, we had issues with supply chain just like everyone else, but that went away. And then Denton County specifically is the sixth fastest growing county in America right now.
Wow.
So there's so much building out here. It's crazy. And it's
The
it's
place to be
nice
a
because I
realtor.
mean, yeah, and that's kind of what drew me out here too. Was just I mean, every time that we'd look at, the top 10 markets in America when we were sitting in sales meetings, Dallas the area was always on that market. So it was very appealing to me.
Well, speaking of new construction, you're getting into some development, right?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, Dallas, the rural areas of Dallas do not need permits for anything except for sewage.
All right.
Yeah, just wanted to just pause for that. Yeah, so you have to be really, really careful on the homes that you do buy, especially if you're in rural areas, because you will not have somebody looking over the shoulder of a sub. So when I saw that there was a need for good construction, and that land was cheaper out here. I expanded my real estate knowledge into developing homes out here. So I do have two properties that I'm looking to build on. It's been hard, actually harder to get financing as a builder than it has been as a buyer. Funny enough.
Hmm.
So and partially that's just because people were so into buying cheap land and then trying to build 600, $700,000 homes when I'm just trying to build a $250,000 home. So there's a lot of people that built spec homes that are having problems selling them
Hmm.
because we have our ups and downs with the market. But now that's kind of put a sour taste into some of the banks mouth of like, oh well, we don't want to do spec homes anymore. I'm like, what? I've got amazing affordable homes that are ready to be built. So that's been my only challenge really. However, there is such a need for good quality builds out here because there's nobody really looking over your shoulder. And I had to say that with as many new homes as I've sold, the builders actually do get a lot of the fun, and I really want a piece of that just because it's so much fun to actually be able to pick and choose like what kind of finishes you have, what color, and that's just something that people in our industry really don't get a chance to see behind that curtain. So it's been really cool to peek behind and I'm really excited for when my financing does come through.
Oh, I imagine so. Um, so let's travel in time back to 2.5 years ago.
Mhm.
What would you tell Ethan, who's about to move, what to do a little bit different? Is there anything?
Um, yeah, I would have liked to have gotten my license before I moved. And I would have liked to have understood the licensing process and the licensing requirements before I moved. And although I did start that process a couple months before we actually did the move, I really wasn't focused on that. I was focused on closing out the files that I had and preparing for a cross country move is not fun and it's not cheap, so there were just so many other things on my mind. um However, I was only about 2 or 3 months out, of deciding, hey, this is what I wanted to do, to then it all also happening. So maybe taking a little bit more time to do that. And then also being that I was in the market in real estate for 7 years, by the time that I had moved, I thought, I got this. I'm not going to have a problem with with doing the whole learning a new license thing. I bought the absolute cheapest schooling I could find because I just wanted to save money, and that was probably my mistake. I mean, at this point, I probably would have gone with the more expensive one, which out here, I forget what I think it's called Champions
Champions,
out
I think,
here.
is the big one there.
Yeah, and I guess the only reason why I say that is just because the cheap one out here required me to have in-person proctoring for my practice tests, which it's harder because Champions allows Zoom proctoring. And it's not necessarily that I didn't want the proctoring. It was more of like me having to find somebody to proctor for me because it couldn't be a family member. I ended up having to go to my son's school and library and ask his librarian to watch me, which was kind of funny in general, just because I'm sitting in these tiny seats
I was gonna say, was
with
it
my
tiny little?
yeah. I mean, I felt like it was Billy Madison all over again. uh you know except no spitwads. uh so it was just a little bit more stressful just because of that. And I mean, I think if we're talking about being humbled, that was the time that I was being humbled the most, was having to go to elementary school library to take my tests. And funny enough is that my son's librarian is also a teacher, a parent of his school friend. So it was just this weird, like, and luckily she was so nice. She would cheer me on, like, oh, it's great. You passed it right away. I mean, I passed every test, like, in the first time, but still, it was kind of annoying. And then also, I tried taking a test right around the Thanksgiving time, and I needed a code for that proctor. And unfortunately, the school that I went with, they took off that whole week, so I couldn't actually get a code for that proctor until after Thanksgiving. And I had to actually pay for an extension of the time, because it was a cut rate school, so they only gave me 4 months to do the whole class. And I finished 4 months and 4 days into it, so I had to pay an extra like 50 or $100 just to extend it. um and that was, I mean, like, I was ready to take the test. She was ready to administer and proctor the test, but nobody was there answering the phone to give me my code. So I mean, I was a little bit salty about that.
I remember.
Yeah. Not happy about it, but it's okay, it still happened.
So, what about day one? You have your license. Is there anything you would have changed there? What your trajectory was after that?
um you know we learned so many times that we're supposed to pound the phones, and try to figure out what our one lead gen lever is, or two or three. And you know just new agent stuff, I was trying to pull on every lever to see what was working. But at the end of the day, I know that my lever that is networking. So I mean, I really could have pulled a little bit harder on that one. Probably put a little bit more effort into some of the other local networking that was going on that I didn't take enough time to look for them, but now I know that they're there. And now I'm up to 3 or 4 networking groups and meetings a week now at this point. But I mean, I would have done that if I would have done that a year and a half ago, it would have been different, I think.
Was there any reluctance to go do that? Or was it you're trying to test everything to see if maybe this market was different or maybe there's something you'd missed out on before?
Um, I think there was reluctance. I think that was it was there was a lot of I don't know what I I lost a lot of confidence in myself. I think that that's the easiest way to say it. Being out of the game for that half a year like that I mentioned, um, just kind of getting beat up with looking for the proctor thing and yeah, just stuff along that lines. I had lost the confidence. I'd forgotten that I'd sold over 100 homes in a short amount of time. I think 6 years at that point. So I mean, I had forgotten how good of an agent I was, and really just was focusing too much on the fact that I was a new guy, and that really set me back. I think just mentally.
Momentum is very, very important. It kind of like a car sitting in the garage too long, right?
Yeah,
Baby it a little
yeah,
bit, make sure, is this ready for the road, whatever. So it sounds really
yeah.
like
You don't want to let your gears get too gunked up.
it sounds kind of like you went through the new agent experience again for you got to replay that, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, is there any advice you'd like to share with any agent starting?
Yeah. So I thought that this would probably come up. So I wrote some notes on up above my screen here. So that's why I'm looking up. So I say read the contract, write lots of practice contracts. You and I did that. You made me, you forced me, and in Oregon, and that was one of the things that I mean you and I talked about before when doing this. So and then it's not necessarily to stop you from taking a day to write that contract, because I mean it still is going to be a day for a day long situation, but at least when you're talking to clients what the heck you're talking about. Luckily, the association here has a contracts class that they put on every month. So I mean, I went to that one a couple of times, and that helped a lot. So knowing what you're talking about makes it so much easier to know what you're talking about. It's actually have the confidence to talk to clients about things. Um, what else? Know your broker and get a mentor. Or at least get somebody that's going to be willing to help you, even if it costs you a percentage of your first couple of deals. But also just knowing, I mean, the nice thing about EXP is that they they were ready to just answer questions that I had. I was able to log into our world and ask questions when I needed to. But then also, having my team, ready to help, and somebody that knew what they were doing, and written a lot more contracts and seen a lot more contracts than I had. Um, it was like, man, I remember when I could do this, and I knew, I could say, hey, yeah, look at page 7 for this, and that's the exact, it's this paragraph. So I mean, it still takes a little bit of time to get to that point, but talking to somebody who knows that already is just going to help you be more confident writing an offer. I think I talked about this already, but joining the association, and then also just being part of that, it really just gets you to talk to just talking to more people, um, and more people in our industry. So looking for realtor only networking groups, or realtor only helping, like, groups that will help you, has been super helpful for me, at least. So I mean, it's just being around other people that are in our business, and that really gets you an opportunity to really ask questions that you don't necessarily want to ask when you actually need to know. You can start to know those things before that happens. And I'd say a couple of really important things are practice on yourself and not your clients. So I mean, for me, I ended up purchasing 2 more homes in the first year of living here. So I closed on the anniversary that I closed on this home. I closed on my third home here. So, and that was just part of me needing to one, fulfill a timeline for my 1031 exchange from property that I'd sold in Oregon, but then two, that just got me back into, okay, well, I'm writing an offer for myself. And then in talking with those agents, it was funny enough is that was I'm in the northwest side of Dallas. Those homes are in East Texas, which are 2 hours away. So even that was a completely different experience, because I mean those other co-oping agents were so helpful, just being able to talk to you. And that was before I joined a team. So admitting that you're a new agent to other agents is not necessarily a bad thing. It means that if they're good people, they're willing to actually kind of help you along and tell you like, hey, if like this doesn't seem right, or hey, I noticed that you forgot this. And instead of taking advantage of that, which I wouldn't necessarily say that it happens more out here in the busier city side of things, but people are a little bit less forgiving out here than in East Texas, that's for sure.
Interesting.
And then yeah, it was just kind of like, not necessarily like good old boys thing, but definitely like, hey, like I get it, you're new, and let me help you out. But then also I hear know your sports your sports teams. I'm not a big sports fan. I haven't been in a while, but I really had to get to know the lingo out here. And then also just the big political issues out here too. I mean, those come up when you're talking to new people, to clients, and to other agents. And I don't necessarily mean like national stuff. I mean local stuff. I mean school boards, zoning issues, new stuff that's coming in with like all the new building that's happening. There's a big shift in school zones, and just roads getting built, and why roads are getting built differently. So just kind of knowing that, it helps with what has been a big deal out here, which is called geographic competency, which has been a really big issue with a lot of people that are moving in, of like, hey, are you actually talking to somebody who knows what you're talking about? Um, learning big landmarks, and then learning the roadways and major highways has been a big help to me. I mentioned that was one of the big things that I had really focused on. And then also just using Google Maps to see what to expect. And that's just something that I tell my clients in general, but it was something that I also started to just use it as well. Of like, okay, well, I'm going to an area that I haven't necessarily been in, so I wanted to know what I'm looking at while I'm driving it. And Google Maps and Street View has been very helpful.
I think this would be a good, I didn't think about talking about this, but I think this would be helpful to a lot of people, is your process of choosing and figuring out where you want to live. Like, Dallas is huge. How did you pick the area you picked? What did you go through? I know you took flights and all these other things, but I think for an agent to understand the struggles of someone moving across country to a new place, I think this would be super helpful for them to understand those things to consider.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is a huge example of know what lane you're in and stay in it. I knew that I wasn't an agent in Texas when I was moving from Oregon. So I worked with an agent who was very willing to drive me around. She was amazing. She actually ended up working for a lease to own company, but she's still an agent. Um, and she understood what our challenges are as real estate agents, and not necessarily that she drove me to looking at Denton, but she definitely told me the pros and cons of Denton in general. Denton is specifically right in the middle and the north side of Fort Worth and Dallas, so they call it the Golden Triangle. So we've got Fort Worth, Dallas, and then Denton on the top. And she explained that would just make it easier for me to service the whole area, which she did too. Now she was in Irving, which is kind of right in the middle, but a little bit lower. But the nice thing is that there's so much more building now that's happening even north of me, that I just have just a large, now very and easily accessible service area because of where I was. And specifically, I mean, I like I said, I came here a couple of times. I rented a car once and then I came out here for 3 days and I put on 500 miles and I drove with the windows down. I smelled the smells, I felt the air. I looked for the busiest times of the day to drive, and I put myself in the middle of traffic every time I could, every chance I could get, just because for me, understanding traffic and is so important to our industry. I mean, we can sit in traffic or we cannot sit in traffic. I mean, it really depends on when we're going to be working with our clients. But knowing how to deal with traffic and how traffic deals with you was a big deal for me. And what I found was that unlike Portland, there's not a lot of looky-loos out here. Like there's an accident on every single highway at any single time, at any single part of the day. So people, it's just so normal. I mean, the amount of times I've seen upside down cars out here, it's more than I can count on my hands. I mean, and you know, I've been like I said, it's been 2 years in July for me, and I've seen so many major accidents out here. It's kind of sad and scary. But one, I mean, make sure you get a dash cam for your safety. But then two, just know that you're gonna be in some type of traffic somewhere. So so for me, just using some sort of GPS has been helpful, just to know you know you see the red building up, get on an expressway, get off the freeway, and then knowing that for the most part traffic isn't ever almost at a complete stop out here. It's usually at like a 10 to 15 mile an hour pace. So you're never stuck except for one area that's right around the corner for me. It's over a bridge. There's no way around it. So I just try to stay off of that in general. But that actually took me about a year to figure that one out. And that was just by luck.
So
So, yeah.
what other criteria did you use to figure out Denton over other locations? What were you looking for in a house? What were you looking for in a neighborhood
Yeah.
that would translate to most buyers to help the agents kind of understand the process?
So we were a little bit different in that we wanted a multi-generational home, and that was a little bit difficult because I have two kids, and I have, you know, my mom living with us, or us living with her mom, however everyone to put it. So we needed either two masters or something that would equate to that. So it was for me, it was looking for size, and then good school zones, which was the first time I'd ever actually taken that into consideration, being that I didn't have kids that were in school ever both times that I had bought homes in Oregon. So that was really important for me. And then also being in a neighborhood was kind of important for me as well. But also having my my personal space, because I didn't want to be able to touch my neighbor's house from my yard. So there was a lot of things that were important to me. And that's where coming a couple of times and then driving around a couple of times and really getting a feel for the neighborhood. We really almost got into a neighborhood which is on the exact opposite side of Dallas, called McKinney. And McKinney is beautiful. Old growth trees, you know, mostly built up in the 80s and 90s, sprawling yards and everything like that. But at the end of the day, they were older, they needed renovations, and they weren't ready for multi-generational homes. So the nice thing about Denton was, because it was up until about 10 years ago looked at as just a rural country city, they had a lot more space out here to build something that was a little bit larger. I have to say I probably took a little bit smaller yard than I expected, but we still have our space. But the nice thing about Denton specifically is that there's three major colleges out here in Denton. There's the TWU, there's UNT, and then NCTC, and those are all really affordable but really nice colleges. And because of that, our Denton Square, which is kind of the downtown area, is very vibrant. There's a lot of kind of cool things to do for younger people. And then because it was like I said, a rural town, it was also kind of open for people that were more matured, like my mom. So I mean, it's a really good mix of everybody out here. And that's really what ended up drawing us out here. We saw the property. It was in sticks by the time that we saw it. It was still getting built. But the agent that I was working with said, check out the square. I think that's going to either help you decide yes or help you decide no. And we went there and it was like immediate yes. Like, this is cool, because it wasn't just this drab nothing happening square. It was kind of hip and cool and had live music, and they have an open container law out there, so it's kind of cool. You can walk around with a beer. It's neat.
Do you have do you have any regrets as far as like, oh, I wished I would have picked a mile south or anything else? Are you Do you wish you would have rented first? I know multi-generation makes that harder, but in a perfect world, do you wish you'd rented first to then scope out the whole area, or are you absolutely fine where you're at?
I can definitely see that myself living here for the next 20 years. That being said, I mean, we're agents, like we have this bug where we see, you know, like I used to sell cars and all of a sudden I had 5 cars. So, so I mean, there's always going to be a nicer neighborhood. There's always going to be a nicer home. There's always going to be something that's better. But at the end of the day, this home really fit our what we were looking for and fit our budget really well. Because when I do look at those other homes, they're like, man, I really like this place. It's like $200,000 more than what I wanted to pay. So in essence, no. But being a real estate agent, we see so many beautiful homes all the time.
Well, I love this story. You made a choice, you took a chance, and you went after it. And there's bumps and bruises like there always are. You got to be a new agent again and go through all that, but you went after it. And that's what I think a big part of real estate is you have a dream and you go after it. So really appreciate you sharing the story with you. If anyone wants to send you some referrals, how do people get in touch with you?
So you can find me at ethanfrelly.exprealty.com. That's just my website. I'm also on Facebook, which is just Ethan Frelly, ETHANFRELLY. It made it really easy because for a while it was kind of incognito. Or you can just call me. And my local number, because I just got a new one, is 940-220-9997. Repeating numbers always help.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time with me, Ethan. I think this is going to help a lot of agents, new agents, people think about changing, feeling stuck, and not wanting to take that extra step. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.